Duffield is a senior yoga teacher with more than 3,000 hours under her belt, largely in tantric disciplines. Her training is made up of equal parts university and ashram life, and she has thousands of devoted students spanning the globe. Bec comes from a background of human rights and psychotherapy. And right now, she's enjoying the adventure of being a small business owner, a yoga teacher, and a mother of two divine little humans. In her spare time, you'll find her soaking up the sunshine with her beautiful family at one of Bellarine Peninsula's beautiful beaches. Hello, Bec. Welcome to Heart-Led Changemakers.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bec, tell me, how on earth did you go from human rights and psychotherapy to yoga?
Well, yoga had been there the whole time. I've been doing yoga for a long time, my whole adult life, and it was always there. It was the only reason I ever survived a little bit of a career in social work and then in human rights, because it was just the balance to all of that, I guess. And I'd just been doing teacher trainings forever. I'd never wanted to be a yoga teacher. There's absolutely no chance that I was ever going to get up and teach a room full of people. And then I had my daughter and I wasn't working, and something about becoming a mother, this is from someone, I never planned to have children. Then had a surprise pregnancy. And when I became a mum, I just realized that I could just do anything. Like, I was so astounded with myself for growing and producing this like perfect little human, that it just kicked off this thing in me of like, I can do whatever I want. I made her. So it was really her, actually, and in their journey into motherhood. And we were talking in my mother's group one day, and people were saying, I wish there was just some yoga around for us. And I said, oh, I've done some teacher training. I guess I could have a go at teaching us. It turned out I loved it. I taught it and I loved it and I loved it and I loved it. And I just never stopped, basically. Never went back to any other work.
I love that. I mean, having a child and becoming a mum, that's a pretty epic task and deal. So I'm delighted to hear that it empowered you. I think a lot of mums don't have that opportunity. Some have postnatal depression and have a completely different experience. But how amazing that you creating this beautiful child led to you creating now your mission and your work to help other people in that way. I just think that that's pretty special.
Oh, it is. And I know what you mean about like the different journeys into motherhood, because I had two children and I had two polar opposite landings with them. So just easy, gentle, delightful landing with my first child, and the dark hell of postpartum with my second. So absolutely, yeah, understand that it's not everyone's journey. For me, I think because I never planned to have children, like I'd made a decision I didn't want to have kids, which to me now is so wild. And that the whole thing was so miraculous. Like, I found pregnancy so miraculous. I was just astounded that with no decision by me and no conscious input, my body was just making this person. So I was caught up in the rapture and the wonder, I think, of that whole first experience. And yeah, we can all probably thank her. She was the catalyst for me just feeling brave. So I was like, oh my God, if I can do that, I can do anything.
Yeah. And that's pretty amazing. With the human rights and psychotherapy, or psychotherapy in particular, is there any links between that and yoga? Like, do you find that there's crossover in
there's a massive overlap, huge overlap. So yoga is principally like a way for us to study ourselves. It's an investigation into who we are, and it's different tools and ways to study us and look at us. So yes, there's a lot of overlap between them. And I think having the foundation, like the first thing I ever did at uni was the psych degree. And I think having the foundation of some of the tools and the principles and the way we look at ourselves and look at others in terms of mind and personality and all the structures that make us. I think having that benefit enabled me to really understand some of the deep philosophy of yoga. I'm like, oh, okay, we're really doing this for the mind. Like everything in yoga is for the mind, because that's at the end of the day, like we just make ourselves up in our mind. There's nothing else really going on than that. And so being able, and the way the yogis did it, I found so clever. Their system is so intelligent in, for example, giving avatars and calling them gods and making up stories so that we can understand parts of our personality. And then bringing you, like if you take a postural class, for example, like how do you respond when you're upside down and it's really hot in here and there's sweat dripping off your nose and you've got one leg off the ground? Like, could you in that moment steady yourself and become okay? Because if you can do it here, you're going to be able to do it in a hard conversation. You're going to be able to do it in traffic. So I just found the whole system so genius. I was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. And especially in terms of like when I was doing the subjects in my undergrad of like therapeutic psych and understanding roles of psychologists and counselors and talk therapy and top-down therapies and things like this, and just seeing how generally ineffective it was. Like, no shade on counselors and psychologists, like I'm a therapist, I think we should all have one, but then seeing the clever way that yoga does that but brings the body in and gives you the tools to do it yourself, I just was instantly just like, this is genius. It's so clever. So yeah, heaps of overlap. And I definitely think my even actually, look, I can draw a bow between anything. So this might not even be truthful or might not resonate with other people, but even human rights. I did a master's degree in human rights and international law. And so that's largely about the way we govern each other and like what's fundamentally a right for us and what isn't, and what are we entitled to and what are we not, and how do we enforce that? Even that I can find a lot of overlap. Like, how do we govern ourselves and what are we entitled to and what are other people entitled to? So on a sort of macro scale with international law and on a micro scale with yoga and looking at the way we govern ourselves. So, but look, I think anyone could come into yoga with any degree or any background or not degree or anything like that. Like I've got a dear friend, she's an engineer and she has this most masculine, logical mind. Beautiful. She's just a genius. And she comes to yoga and she gives me her insights from her engineering degree and the way that she understands, we're all just seeing it through our own lens. And that just happens to be mine, which has been useful for me.
I love that. I would never have thought engineering would be piecing together yoga and engineering, but I guess you're right. Everyone's got their own lens and their own take of it. And one of the things that I really love about yoga is the fact that you meet yourself every single time, and each time it's a completely different take. There's something else. It's never the same. Your body never feels the same. One day you can do a pose and the next day you can't. Something, as you get older, things feel a bit more challenging, but it's a really good way of showing yourself that grace and respect. Would you say that's would you say that that's the essence of yoga?
I absolutely love that insight. It's so beautiful. And yeah, we're so different day to day. And I think, yeah, you have absolutely just touched on the essence of yoga, is finding out like, who am I is really the essence of yoga. And we're not the same every day. And like, if I were to ask you now, like, who are you? Or if I was to ask someone in the street, who are you? We'd give a bunch of labels that things, but we're not these things. So I might say I'm a mother and I might say I'm a yoga teacher, but I existed before I was both of those things. And so I can't be that. I'm just temporarily holding those things. So like you just said, like it was so beautiful that you come in and you're different every day. And yoga teaches you that, like there's something constant underneath all those waves and wobbles and like the different things. Like now I'm a social worker, now I'm a yoga teacher. There's something under that. Today I'm flexible. Yesterday I wasn't. Like you're trying to get to that essence that's the same. So landed it beautifully. Yeah.
Yeah, and you learn so much about being patient as well. Patience and grace are the things that I've picked up the most in yoga, because I get frustrated really easy if I can't do something. The competitiveness of my overactive masculine mind wants to be able to just do, and then there's the
Yeah.
other part of me that just wants to surrender in it. But when your body isn't playing nicely, if you will, there is it's almost like a new way of respecting yourself. Would you say that
Oh my
that's
gosh.
true?
Very definitely. You've got a beautiful way of speaking to this. And yeah, like compassion,
Yes,
basically. And
compassion. Yeah.
you get to know those voices. You get to know the who's got a narrative in your mind, and whether it's kind or whether it's cruel or whether it's pushing or whether it's lazy. And that really shows up. Like yoga shines a spotlight on that massively, like the way you talk to yourself. And your body's there teaching you, right? And if your body needs that voice to calm down, it's probably not going to go into a shape just so
Yeah.
that voice can have a little fit, and then you can catch it and be like, that's not how I want to talk to myself. Um, so yeah, like that self-compassion, I think, comes inevitably with yoga. In the beginning, you might have like even a little flare up of whatever your default is. Like I'm a pretty naturally competitive person as well. I like winning stuff. I think I think we all do. But I like to win, I like to be right. All of those things. And I think, yeah, yoga points it out to you, and until you get acquainted with it, and then you can just let it go a little bit.
Yes. With the different modalities of yoga, because I know you teach a yin yoga and you teach it's nidra, isn't it?
Yoga nidra, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yoga nidra. With the different types of yoga, do you feel like they draw out different aspects of you? So, like with yin yoga, because you're sitting in that uncomfortableness for so long, sometimes it feels like an eternity. Your fascia is releasing the stress and the trauma. But how does that compare to an experience like what with basically what I'm trying to ask you is with the different um, yoga styles and the modalities of yoga, is there particular ones that are more likely going to draw different things out of you?
That's such a good question. Yes, you're going to be asked to face different things in you. So, for example, like if you're in a flow class and there's a lot of balancing happening, and you're having like a wobbly day and you just can't get the balance, then you're probably going to come face to face with some ego stuff. And you're going to come face to face with some stories about how you think you should be able to do things compared to what your body's doing. And then it's just this week, actually, I found this research, and it's so fascinating, about fascia, so a connective tissue that we're working on in yin, and the way that fascia communicates with the emotional part of the brain. So, for the longest time, there have been people saying, "Oh, you store feelings in your hips, you store emotions in your knees," like this kind of thing. And I've noticed recently a lot of backlash against these kind of claims that have no scientific foundation in yoga. And I think that's fair. I think like if we're making claims like that, we should definitely be able to back them up scientifically. Um, but anyway, now there is research that's showing that the fascia speaks to the emotional part of the brain, which is why people might cry in a massage, for example, because you get that release in the fascia, and why people can get emotional in yin, because we now have that direct link to that part of the brain, which is fascinating, I think. In yin, you come up against like a lot of discipline, a lot of like, can you stay present? And you see a lot of the time, I think you come face to face with your unconscious mind in yin, because you'll start to fidget, or you'll make little shifts, little adjustments, little sighs. People do this in flow class as well. I've noticed when people are about to do something that maybe they don't want to do, they suddenly need a drink, or yeah, and it's unconscious. We're not making the decision of, oh no, I'm not doing another chair pose, I'm going to have a drink. we'll probably just create a thirst mechanism and be like, I need a drink, because that's the unconscious mind protecting us. So yeah, I think in yin, where it's all like slowed right down, you come face to face with like that side of yourself, what's actually here,
Yes.
which is interesting. And a lot of people will say, oh, I can't do yin, I can't get my mind to stop. And it's that same saying, like, I can't do yoga, I'm not flexible. I'm like, well, this is like the exact reason you should be doing yin, because
Yes.
like
And it is
you've just said the antidote to the problem.
it is such a good way for you to quieten the mind and to be present. It's probably the only time someone is doing something relatively active, but being present with what they're doing. You know, when you're walking, you're distracted, you're listening to, music or talking to somebody or, whatever it is. And all the other exercise activities is quite active. You're thinking about things, where yoga, you're actually being called to be still, to be present, to go within. And I think I saw that study that you're referring to about the fascia, and I was talking to a girlfriend about this. I was saying when I've just recently gone through quite a bit of transformation, and my brain, my mind is fine, but my physical body is still trying to understand that it's safe and everything's okay now. And I am, even though it's been a while now, where I should be, over it, if you will, my body doesn't really quite understand that it's fine. And so it's about using those modalities to pull you back so that you can release. And I love yin yoga is my favorite, mostly because I feel like a sloth, and I don't feel like I'm being too overactive, which is great. But I also like that I'm seeing how disciplined I can be. And I like the feeling of that release, where, that first, minute or two feels really challenging, but then you come to this point of surrender and your body goes, oh, okay, yeah, really needed that. And I don't know any other modality that can give you that same feeling, that gives you that same release. And then the physical, not only just the physical aspects, but the mental release as well.
Absolutely. Like physically speaking, your connective tissue is going from like a crystalline structure into a more liquid, like gel-like. So that's that release. And what happens when you do that is, say, if your fascia is all crystalline, because it's running through every single cell in the body, your cell might be, for example, let's say, trying to send out some immune system cells through the body, but it can't access because there's fascial walls. So you get that release, and then you feel your body's intelligence just calm in and take things and reset things. So that's beautiful. But then the practice of being able to access safety, which is this internal state that we have, and being able to get there, like yin offers this potential for this, right? Like, I can do this, and I can just be here, and I can let these sensations exist in my body, and I don't have to shift them out. I'm actually okay, and I'm feeling where I am, and I'm feeling my body. And it's that same kind of thing. You sort of drop into internal safety, and
Yeah.
that's like this huge relief for everything. So yeah, yin offers the space for this to happen. And I also don't know another modality that really offers that in the same kind of way. Yeah.
No, I
It's
don't.
beautiful as a teacher, actually, because you get to see, sometimes you can see if someone's maybe new and they might have their eyes really open and be looking around and like checking what everyone else is doing, and lots of those external reassurances. And then after a while, you can see them just close and drop in. And then you're like, they found their safety. And now that like real healing magic can start in their body.
Yes. Are your yin classes like spiritually inclined, or are you more uh, is it more traditional?
Well, that's a really good question, because yin itself is a really new practice, as in like 50 years old. But prior to yin, there's Taoist practice of holding shapes for a long time. There's white tantra practices where you hold shapes for a long time for the same similar kind of outcomes. My classes. I teach like a lot of the yogic philosophy in my classes. It's just what I do. It's how I want to teach. I don't teach yoga as functional movement because I think there's a lot more to it than that. I think you can get functional movement. You can go to a gym, and it's beautiful, and I think we should all be doing it. But I teach yoga as a discipline, as in a philosophy. And so I bring that into yin. Yin, I tend to talk a lot more about fascia. I love talking about fascia. I'm kind of obsessed with it. It's fascinating to understand. I talk a lot about somatics. A lot of my training has been in somatic inquiry, somatic experiences. So, because this gives people the most beautiful experience. So I'll do things like in a yin class, I might cue someone and say, like, what's the biggest sensation you can feel right now? And then what's the second biggest? And what's the third biggest? So you just go deeply into the body and you just withdraw from the outside world more and more and more and more until you're just very deeply in your own body. And that is this beautiful, like meditative healing experience. So without even mentioning anything spiritual or anything woo-woo, you can take people somewhere really different. You can just say, like, give me the biggest sensation. And is it moving or is it still? And is it getting stronger or is it getting smaller? And just study your body. Go inside you and study your body. And that becomes this otherworldly kind of, experience for people just to go inwards.
Yes, I love that. And what a really clever way. It's almost like a universal way of getting people anchored in, because not everyone is spiritually inclined, and some like
No.
I love it, give me all of it. I'm straight in there. But other people are less receptive to it,
Mm.
and that's fine. They might have more of a scientific brain, but I love that that's a way to work around it, and you're still taking people on that journey and to that place without it being too woo-woo. I think that's great.
Yeah, I think like if you're trying to get people to come in to a yoga class, and like a yoga class is just inherently kind of vulnerable, right? Because you might lie on your back, you might open up your legs, you might open up your throat. There's a lot of vulnerability in the way we position our body. And you're in a room, maybe with strangers, maybe with people you know, and the teacher might suggest that you close down your eyes. Like there's so much happening there for someone to be like, whoa, this is like pretty like full on, and then you add something woo woo on top of that and you're going to lose. You're going to like
Yeah.
scare people when you're trying to get them to feel and create some internal safety. So yeah, like I think there's definitely an art to sharing the philosophy of yoga, and a lot of that is via the body. So there's no practices in yoga that are like, imagine yourself down the road at a beautiful waterfall. Like it's all via the body. Come in via the body, via the body. And most people can do that and find like some kind of nice experience or worthwhile experience via the body.
Yes, I love that. What what would you say is your mission as a yoga instructor?
Oh my gosh, that's such a big question. The first thing that comes to mind is just getting people to understand that yoga is not a scary thing and that it is useful for all of us. Like whether you're spiritual, whether you're not, like you don't have to be spiritual to do yoga. You just like you don't need to be flexible to do yoga. Yoga is a mode of self-inquiry. Like it's a way to understand who you are. And I think that that's really useful. I have found the yogic teaching and tools so valuable that my mission is to just make them really, really, really accessible. Like just make people able to use them. And then my second mission to this, because I'm a Tantra teacher, and Tantra is like largely about the way we relate to others, our relationships, our friendships, our like the way we engage with other humans is the way we grow and the way we learn about ourselves. So community, building a community, is really my mission. Like, get people to connect to other people, get people to feel like they belong, get people to have a safe place when they need help or they want to share joy. So community to me and yoga are the same, like same.
Yes, because your business strives to offer local products in your from your area, right? You are passionate about creating that environment in your studio, and you've got a cafe as well.
Yeah. So there's two studios and a cafe. The cafe's fun. It's new. It only opened last year. But I was just noticing that because it's quite a busy studio, we're kind of like back-to-back classes. And so I could see people wanting to connect. There was like budding connections starting, like people like giving each other a little smile after class if they're always in the same Wednesday class together or something. And I'm like, I felt out of integrity that we'd be like, get out, we got the next class. We don't say it, but they know they have to go. And I was like, they need to be able to gather. Like, I can see webs trying to form, and then they walk out to the car park and they drive away. So I have like no experience with cafes or anything, but I was like, we need a space where they can come together, and it's just worked the exact way I wanted it to. It's so cool. It's so much fun. People are connecting in there, friendships are blossoming, people are getting to know people. Even the other week, I was so happy because we had someone that was brand new, like came into class, said, I've just moved to town. I've heard that this is where I can find a community. And I was like, oh my God. I said, have you ever done yoga? And they were like, no, but I will. And after class, they went into the cafe and there was a table where a bunch of people that have been in class together were sitting. And I was just thinking, I'm like, that could seem really intimidating to someone walking in by themselves, right? There's a group of people laughing. They clearly know each other, and this person's brand new to town, and they just waved them over and like, sit with us. And I went out the back and I was doing dishes and stuff and came out, and they all looked like old friends after about 10 minutes. And I was like, that right there, like, is what it was supposed to do. And it's what it's doing. So yeah, so cool.
That is very cool. I mean, when I think about the cities that I've lived in, it feels clunky. I've been to loads of different, in Melbourne and in Adelaide, loads of different classes, lots of different styles, lots of different teachers, lots of different spaces. But it is you're right. For like bonds do form because you're sharing, and you're sharing energy as well. Not to go too woo-woo with you, but you are inevitably sharing and releasing energy, and you naturally do want to connect and get to know the people that are doing the same thing as you, similar interests. But it's usually everyone's just get out. There's not, I don't know of any really where you can go and then just hang out and chat and build that friendship group and that support as well. And I
Yeah.
think, I just think to myself, if more spaces and our environments were more like that, imagine what kind of a society we would live in if we were more community based.
Oh, I know. It's absolutely the most important thing. There was this study done in England, and I forget the name of the little town, but it had this little town, and they started an initiative where they would bring the older people together to connect with each other and just to chat. And they dropped their A&E admissions by 30%, which is like, if there were a drug that offered that, it would
Yeah.
be like gold. But it was just people connecting to other people reduces hospital admissions. It makes us live longer. It makes us see the doctor way less. They found that a lot of people were visiting the doctor because they were lonely, and that was putting a strain on public health. Like, and this is one thing, since I opened the cafe, this is actually has made me really emotional. But where you get a lot of older people come in and they are telling us, they're like, I can finally walk somewhere. I've been sitting in my house for years because I don't drive anymore and there's nowhere to walk to. And I was like, oh my God, I had no idea people were just sitting in their house. And anyway, they come in now and they have their regular orders and they've got a place and they've got people. And anyway, that study in England of just reducing hospital admissions by 30% just by getting people to connect to each other, I think is the most telling thing we have. We heal each other. People
For,
heal people.
for sure they
Like,
do. It reminds me of that Netflix show that I watched late last year. I think it's called something like 5-year-olds in retirement homes or something.
I know.
I,
Oh my
I
God.
I was crying through the whole thing. I
Mate, I sobbed
bawling.
my heart out.
It was just gut, it was so gut-wrenching, but so beautiful at the
Yeah,
same time. That the the inquisitive nature of the little ones, and also with the people in those homes were so lonely. Some people didn't have visitors for months.
I know.
They would just sit in their room. They didn't even want to leave. And so again, that comes back to that community, and even for me, moving from Melbourne to Adelaide, back to
Mhm.
Adelaide. In Melbourne, lots of people, especially in the city, everyone walks. There's not, they drive, obviously drive as well, but there's a lot of walking. It feels more interactive. Adelaide, though, everyone drives. You won't ever see someone walking down the street unless they're exercising, which is, they're
Oh,
either in the gym or
okay.
down at the beach. But you don't really feel, there isn't a place, it doesn't really interact like a community in that way, and it's sad because people, we've got people that are moving here and who live here that are not really connected, and
Mm.
it's just yeah, again, like I just think, wow, imagine if we were more community based, what those experiences would be like, and how would we be feeling, more importantly, like what would we be feeling as a result of being fulfilled in that way.
I mean, we'd be feeling healthier, safer. We'd be investing in our environment. We like there's only a cascade of positive things that happen when we feel connected and included. But I think the thing that brings out the worst in us, in humans, is if we feel rejected or we're scared we're going to be rejected. And that's all of us, right? We all are scared to be rejected or abandoned by the group. That's just like a primary driver of human behavior. So community puts that one to bed. So we don't carry around that fear anymore. We're nicer when we're not scared as a species. We're
Yeah.
much kinder. We're much more tolerant to other people's points of view when we're not afraid. And I think community takes fear away a lot, which is why it's so important, because then people can be creative, and then people can be thoughtful, and then people can be brave and all of these things. But if we're scared, if we're acting from fear, we can't be any of those things. So if we have a group of people that love and accept us, and we know we can just go to, say, the cafe, and we'll inevitably see some people and hang out, I mean, like, our health will have such a different, like everything will be better. But like our physical, our mental health, there's enough research now that we can't deny that community improves physical and mental health for everybody. So
Yes,
yeah, it should
absolutely.
be prioritized.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What do you think is the greatest gift, yoga or the tantric disciplines that you've learned? What's been the greatest gift that they've taught you?
So I grew up and in like a Catholic schooling system, and to me, and it was just the way that it was taught to me, um, everything that was sacred seemed very separate from me. So I really grew up with that narrative that God was this like amazing magical thing, and I was a dirty sinner, and there was a big gap between us. Tantra has taught me that like everything can be sacred. Every little moment of every little day, every flower, every leaf, um, can be a beautiful spiritual thing. And like God is God in inverted commas, because a lot of people have like a lot of trauma attached to that. But God as being like consciousness, in yoga is a better word for it, is everywhere. It's not separate. It's not something you have to become. It's not something that you need to be good to deserve. It's just here if we notice it. And there's the thing that um that I've really noticed with Tantra is I have a lot of moments in each day of just like reverence. And it might be reverence at like a sunset, and it might be reverence. Sometimes it's reverence at like a dirty pile of washing in my house, because I'm like, that just means I have these lively children that are running around, and I can have like emotions over doing the laundry and how beautiful it is. So it's that weaving it into every single day. And you don't go to a church, and you don't live in like a really simple house and the church is fully fancy and like this big separation that religions seem to have sometimes. It's just like, it's here, it's in every breath, it's in every moment. You find it wherever you're looking. And that to me has been the most useful part.
I love that so much because our society and our world is being driven by more, faster, 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 achieve more, have
Mm,
more, buy more. And
yeah.
it's we're being conditioned and encouraged to move away from that revelry, from the presence and the connection to all things. And I love that that is the gift that it's given you, in that you can take small things, basic things, things that people would typically not be attached to, like washing, for example, and
Yeah.
find that reverence and find that joy and that peace, even in the way that your life is, instead of looking at the washing and rolling your eyes and feeling annoyed and wishing that you had someone to do it all for you. And why
Mm,
is the house not perfect and everything looking the way that it's supposed to, and I use inverted commas there. It's a completely different philosophy to life. And I think, again, there needs to be more of that. And if we were more of that mindset and more thinking in that way, it is the imagine the calm and the peace that we would experience on a day-to-day just with others.
oh, but even others do that for us. Like, so if you don't know a group of people, but you know some things about their life, like you know that they live in a fancy house, or you know they drive a fancy car, or you know they wear a big ring or whatever it is, right? Like you know something about them, then you aren't naturally just being like, oh, I'm so happy for her with her big house and her big car. But if you know them, those things just don't feel like a threat. Like that, a lot of things can highlight the lack in us, I think. And like we're in this very comparative kind of comparative, I don't know, sorry, era where we're just sort of looking at other people and we're getting highlights of people's lives and we're comparing to ours, and it's highlighting the lack that we have in our own life, and that's making us feel yucky and separate and have distance. But if we know people, if we know the lady with the fancy car, her fancy car doesn't trigger our lack anymore because she's just our mate. And like the more that we know each other, the less that we're able to have these big stories about other people's things, and the less it triggers lack in us. So yeah, that can be healed as well.
Of course. And that, I mean, a lot of the time, when you do get to know people in that way, the illusion of it all starts to drop. It just completely
Yeah.
disintegrates.
All we have, if we're just making up stories all the time until our stories like go
Uh,
away by finding out the truth.
For sure. And the worst ones are stories about ourselves.
Yes.
The
Yes, we
story,
have a
our self storytelling about what we can and can't do. And my favorite is right before I go to sleep, the thoughts from like 15 years ago of something that I did that, I don't feel too great about or whatever, starts to pop
uh,
into my head. And I start thinking about how terrible I am. And I'll just go, shh, this is not the time. I'm about to go to sleep now.
oh mate.
There's, there's no time for this. But that's how the brain works. It works to protect you. It works to heal and all sorts of different things. But that
Yes.
storytelling of other people and of ourselves um is the work, I think, is where we
Hmm.
need to to pull those layers apart, to look at them, even though they might be ugly sometimes.
Yes.
And, help the ego calm down. And again, that comes back to that compassion, doesn't it?
I think so. And I think like with those stories, like in Tantra, that we have like a set of morals and ethics of how you're supposed to live. And like the number one, and they come in order. The number one thing is truthfulness. And that's like, yeah, be truthful, don't tell lies. But what it's really talking about is the stories that you're making up because of the unhealed parts of you. That's not truthful. So like heal yourself so you can see what's actually real. You're not looking through your wounds and making up false things. And that's huge work, obviously. That's like lifetimes worth of work for all of us. But that's really what Tantra is saying. It's like if you want to relate to other people and if you want to live in community, do it truthfully. And that means like the stories that you've invented, the stories that you spin in your head about what someone thinks about you or like whatever, or what you think about someone else, they're not true. Do the work to put them down. And
Yes.
yeah, that's
I,
the biggest work we do.
I love even just thinking that's a good question to ask yourself when you start to story tell, when your mind starts to tell you you're terrible about something. Even just pausing to ask yourself, is this actually true?
Yeah.
Is it true? I think I might try adapting that one. I might put some post-it notes around the place to remind myself, just asking and pausing, is it true, before things start to get carried away, because it's easy to build momentum. I live in my head. I'm in there all the time. So I love yoga because it gets me out of that space and back into my
And
heart
you can
space.
say like, is this story going to be the same amount of truth after I have some food? And is this
Yes.
story going to be true after I've had a good night's sleep? And is
Yes.
this story going to be true at a different point in my cycle? Like, and they're
Yes.
not. They're not.
No, they don't. No, of course not. No, that's a really good one. I think our audience can maybe try that too. What do you love most about being a heart-led change maker?
Oh, I love that title. Thanks. My favorite thing is that I I think purpose is probably the most important thing that we can have for our mental and emotional well-being. And I have such a strong sense of purpose, like a huge sense of purpose, which gives me a lot of steadiness. Like I know what I'm doing each day and I know why I'm doing it. And I don't feel out of alignment that maybe I'm just doing something, for money, or I'm just doing something that's temporary. I have a strong, very steady, very secure sense of who I am and what I'm doing. And I haven't always had that. And when I didn't have that, I had a lot of anxiety, like a lot of existential anxiety about like, oh my gosh, what's the point of all this? And that's gone away completely. And so I think, yeah, purpose. I think of all the things that we should be striving for in the world is our purpose, because it's the backbone to health. Um, so yeah, for me, that would definitely be it.
I love that so much, and that's the same for me too. Purpose is everything.
Mm.
Um, how can our audience connect with you? I'll be sharing your website and your links, but how can they reach out to you, and how can they come and experience one of your classes? What's the best way?
Oh, thank you. Well, if they're in the Geelong area or the Bellarine, come into a class. I'd just love that. That would be so cool. We have an online yoga library where people can just do classes at home in their own time. And then obviously I'm on social media, on Instagram, Facebook sometimes. I haven't gotten onto TikTok yet. It seems like overwhelming to learn a whole new one. Probably should, but
It just depends on where your audience is. That's what I think. But I
yeah,
I love the work that you're doing. I've loved our conversation today, and
same.
it's always good getting insight into other heart-led change maker worlds. So thank you for joining me today and sharing your perspective on yoga and the mind and all the things.
Thank you for your beautiful questions.
You're so welcome. I'll see you soon.
Okay, bye.